Welcome to the Reds Reviews podcast brought to you by BossAction.com. And right now at BossAction, there's a $3 promo that is running all the way through the Super Bowl. It does include everything you could want in the paperhead market. $3 all the way through the Super Bowl. No reason not to check it out at BossAction.com. Now let's get on with the Red Show. Yo, what's going on, guys? How are you? It's Red. It is that time of the week, and it is the end of the year. You know, what's interesting about this year is that it has been absolutely the most unpredictable, chaotic, ridiculous thing. I don't know if you guys remember back in May when the government actually recognized the fact that aliens are real. They just kind of threw that out there, and they're like, yep, there's recordings and all kinds of stuff of UFOs that we can't explain. Public was so distracted by COVID stuff and everything else that was going on that it just blew right by. And what else happened? Oh yeah, the presidential election, right? What else? I think there was some big cases that were swept under the rug. Like the Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell kind of stuff. That all happened. I mean, you look at some of the major headlines that happened across the United States, and then obviously that's not important to this show. But what is important about it is that we, as a united front, have gotten through 2020. And now that 2020 is coming to a close, I wanted to give some positive highlights, at least for my side of the street. Now, as much as most people have their opinions about Trump or whatever may be coming out of, the politics, and they're fighting with their families over things that they never thought they'd be fighting about, there are more people engaged in politics right now than ever before in the history of the United States. Maybe in the very beginning, right? Like when Washington and those guys around when Lincoln was, involved with the whole freeing of the slaves and all that. But up until now, it was kind of the same thing where you had the same voting crowd that would show up and vote in the polls. And now it has turned into this entirely different thing where there's so many people involved. And I don't think that people really understand the impact of that. So if you're over 18, you're allowed to vote. And according to the stats that came out for the people that voted for Biden, there's 80 million votes and 74 million for Trump. That's a lot of people, right? That's about a little under 50% of the population. So, you look at that in perspective, and that's a really good turnout, regardless of which side you're on. Doesn't matter. So yeah, let's look at some of the NFL stuff. Let's look at what's going on with the college football and some of the college basketball, and also the NBA. NBA is obviously going to be the thing that I focus on over the next couple of weeks, just because, as the playoffs approach for the NFL, the action itself for that dies down weekend to weekend, right, until the Super Bowl in February. So the NBA right now, let's start with the NFL standings right now. The NFC East, and I'll bring this up first because the worst first is absolutely the worst. I've seen them in a long time. And sometimes, and I was talking to a buddy of mine about this. You look at how the Lakers, the 76ers, and all these different people in the NBA had to tank for several seasons in order to get draft picks. And I don't know if maybe the NFCs all fell into the same category of that right now for tanking and trying to get there and trying to get, some people for draft picks in the 2021 or 2022 year. But it appears that way, considering that the highest percentage in the entire NFC East is a 40% win ratio. That's the highest. That's not what you want to see when you're going into a franchise. If you're an owner or anybody, especially if you're like somebody like the Cowboys, who is a high budget franchise. A 40% win ratio in a high budget franchise is very dangerous for any coaches or any players or anybody to get cut, thrown out, and blamed. So moving on. Seahawks doing great, 11-4. I honestly think that if the Seahawks get together and play well, they could easily go versus somebody, not really sure. Maybe they'll run into the Packers and have a problem. Who knows? Because the Packers are obviously going. And the AFC, you're going to see the Chiefs, obviously. You're going to see the Steelers, obviously. Ravens and Browns right now. This is a big game for the Browns on this upcoming Sunday. That game will decide, some stuff that it's so good to see the Browns doing good. It really is. Regardless of if you're not a Browns fan because of when they had like Manziel, it's just one of those things. So you hate to see a really bad team consistently do bad, and you love to see it when they do good. So I'm happy for them. Bills are the biggest surprise of all of this year for me. I did not anticipate that they would do this well. They are doing extremely well. 12-3 right now, and I don't see, other than the Chiefs and the Steelers, they're the Titans. They have some powerhouses on their team, and I don't know how that's going to translate to defense, okay? Because you got to have defense in order to work that out. You can have as much offense as you want. If you don't stop the other team, you're going to run into problems. But the Chiefs and the Steelers and the Bills all three of them have that. So moving on to the NBA, Lakers are finally starting to get their stuff together, considering that they had a new draft pick that was supposed to be like a super team, kind of like when the Warriors picked up Durant. And now that Durant is back after his Achilles injury, he's obviously throwing up huge numbers and making big differences in the games, for the Nets. So it's this particular basketball season is going to be a lot better to watch, I think, as far as balance goes. The last, obviously the bubble season that just happened, where they finished in Orlando, was not as balanced as it could have been, right? Like we watch a season like that, and they all go in there, and there's these games that everyone's playing, and favorites were favorites and hard favorites, and that's basically it creates a boring system. It really does, and they're I hate to say it, but their ratings just got massacred over the last months because of the political stands and the talks and all the different things that are going on. And I had mentioned in a previous show, like in the NFL where we have these franchise guys that are true American blue bloods, and they're out there, playing every week, and you don't really see too much in the headlines about how they feel about life. They just go out there and they play because they're making their millions of dollars, and they should be content with that. They should be. But, again, we'll see how this plans out. I think that maybe if anybody in the NBA, tries to be tone deaf on this stuff, or maybe they'll see some protests. Maybe we'll see another NBA shutdown for protests, not anything else. So, I am watching. I honestly think that this year the Nets are going to continue to be strong as long as Durant stays healthy. I think that the Lakers are obviously be in the playoff contention depending upon how this goes. It's really sad to see the Golden State Warriors playing the way that they are, even though they have some good people on the team that can actually sink buckets. They're still, they're just not playing together. Maybe that's the issue. Who knows? The Clippers should have a full powerhouse team this year. They're not playing together. And, and you saw that in the game against the Mavericks, right? Like, they ended up losing by 51. The biggest franchise loss in the history of the Clippers to the Mavericks. So there's been some issues also, too, that I wanted to bring up about college basketball, women's college basketball. Duke canceled their entire 2021 season due to COVID fears. Not so much that they had cases or anything like that. There hasn't been any really other big ones, though, but it doesn't surprise me that there's going to be some schools that make these decisions based on expense. To run these teams where there's no fans and nothing going in, no return on investment, anything else, is costly, right? And so when you can't have fans in the stands and doing all this, the concessions and promotions and TV stuff about this, that, the other, and also grants, right? It's costly. It's more costly to run a sports league or team than it is just to shut it down for the year until they can actually have some of the return come in financially. And you kind of seen that. So, there's a team that I was watching in the college football. It's like Coastal Carolina. Literally never even thought about the team until this year. And that has to do with people transferring. There's some people that transferred from there that would have never played at that school because they're playing. And they're actually not doing too bad considering that fact. And there's some other schools that have also picked up a lot of really high-end players because they didn't want to miss out on the 2021 season for college football, for example. So we'll see how that all pans out. I do think that there will be a March Madness. I think that it might get shut down midway just because if they try and do a tournament thing that's not a bubble format, there's going to be teams and stuff that are that don't follow the rules because they're college kids, according to that, and maybe get in trouble. Who knows? But what I do know is that I'm looking forward to all of it. There is going to be a lot of action coming up. For the playoffs, and obviously the NBA will continue to run regardless of what happens. They can't afford another shutdown. And also on top of that, because of the vaccine release and everything else, there is no reason for Fauci and these guys to try and recommend that we don't do anything accordingly. So, moving on to the 2021 year, I have had an actual turnaround, a pretty good turnaround. Picked up casino players that I never thought I would. Volume on casino and live dealer that I never thought I'd have. Live wagering usage has actually increased after we had sports back because people were fiending for it. Wager amounts haven't really gone down. In fact, some of the guys that I had before went up considering that. I don't know what that tells you about the economy and the fear-mongering that the media may do for you. And I also know that, as far as control issues and people being stuck at home, it generates a more focal point on internet gaming. And that is where we shine, right? Yes, we can pay our players in local areas and we can do these things, and I can use the APS to pay the guys that are scared or old, right, that are high risk, and I don't ever have to meet them. But at the same time, there's still the atmosphere that these guys are bored stuck at home. California is basically on full lockdown right now. I do have a couple of guys out there, and I have some other guys in other states that are open, and that's, you can see kind of a difference on the weekends, particularly where these guys are playing more because they're confined. And I find, some of those trends that we wouldn't have anticipated, this goes back to one of the questions that now I'm asking myself as a book, because when it first hit and all we had was casino, what was my contingency plan? We obviously didn't have one for a plague in place because we just didn't think that would be a thing, or a pandemic lockdown. And so now, obviously offering all of the extra third-party things in order to balance out the sheet is a mandatory thing, and promoting that to any of the players that I pick up is a mandatory thing. So looking forward to that in the next year is me being able to increase the contact level that I have with my players via the encrypted method, right? So it's not like I'm just sending them a text message, which is still fine. You can do that. But if you've seen all the new privacy policy issues and things that are coming out of Instagram and Facebook and stuff, they're going to be in the DMs. They're going to be in there checking all that kind of stuff, and that means us will be picked up by their algorithms. And in the case that you're a big guy, you might get picked up. I don't know. But anyways, I'm going to stop it for the week right now. I did want to say Happy New Year, and I'm super glad that everyone has been able to make it through here. And if you're listening, like, subscribe, and follow. And may the odds always be in your favor. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Reds Reviews podcast, brought to you by BossAction.com. Opinions expressed on this show are not the opinions of BossAction.com. And again, any promos or relative information about this company, please check them out at BossAction.com. And we'll see you next week. We hope you have a great one, and thank you for tuning in.